Good morning, everyone. Welcome. This is the Morning Meeting, television's popular morning program where we have cooking and chatting and lots of small talk about our kids. Sean, how are your kids?
Fantastic.
Dan, how are the boys?
Excellent. 4 for 4. They're all good.
All right, excellent. Happy tax day. Dan, right before we started, gave us a fascinating tax fact from his days at H&R Block. Dan,
20% at least of H&R Block filers filed on the last day of the year. So this was always a big one.
That's crazy. All right. We'll all hope refunds for everybody. Thank you for joining. This program is based on the network television news division's morning meetings. We run through the day, we chat about it, and then with a surprise twist, we get your questions. If you're here on the two-way platform, please raise your hand. Andrew Grog, thank you for raising your hand. And we'll get to as many of you as we can. If you're watching on X or on YouTube, don't raise your hand. But as they say on the internet, don't put smack in the chat. Thank you for being part of Two-Way. All right. The president today, Sinclair is the secondary TV crew. New Media, Spectrum News, Fox Radio is the pooler. Sean, any comments on that list?
No, although Spectrum is interesting, it's I think they're stretching on some of these new media. I would say I think they might want to use the phrase non-WHCA media.
Yeah, good point. They're not new. They've been around a while. All right. The president today is having lunch with the vice president at 12:30, closed press, signs executive orders at 2:30, also closed press as of now. Then he participates in the Commander-in-Chief trophy presentation to the Navy midshipmen. Sean, you going to that?
I will be there.
All right, excellent. We'll expect a live report, or at least a summary tomorrow. And then the White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, Sean's successor, briefs at 1 o'clock. Vice President, again, don't know what he's doing today. Hopefully not dropping any more trophies besides having lunch with the president. Congress remains in recess. Thanks to our friends at C-SPAN, we know that at 12:45, Senator Charles Grassley is having a town hall in Lee County, Iowa, that you can watch live on C-SPAN. Recommend. 5 p.m., Hakeem Jeffries is speaking in Brooklyn about Social Security. But the big event on the Democratic side is also at around 5 p.m. Eastern Time, or maybe that's 5 p.m. Central. I'm a little confused because I've seen it reported both ways. But at either 5 or 6 Eastern, Joe Biden is delivering a keynote speech at a conference hosted by advocates, counselors, and representatives for the disabled in Chicago. His first major public remarks since the election. We'll talk about that in a moment. Chairman Xi, Premier Xi, continues his tour around Asia. 4 o'clock today, the judge holds a hearing on Kilmar Abrego Garcia, the case that has become front and center as symbolically and for many people, critics of the administration, substantively about the administration's deportation policy. All right, Trump and China. Big story in the New York Times today by David Sanger, basically saying in David Sanger's polite way, the administration has no tactics or strategy about how to deal with China. We saw some developments today on Boeing. Four, please. Boeing the Chinese told its airlines to stop buying Boeing jets. That's obviously a pretty big retaliatory strike. Boeing, one of the great American companies that sells a fair amount to China. Sean, what do you make of David Sanger's critique that it does not appear the administration has a China policy plan to deal with the fallout from the tariffs and the long-term goals America has with China?
Well, if you believe Secretary Bessent last week, this was the plan. So I think they're going to have to start showing people a little bit more evidence as to what the plan of, obviously, if you thought this was the plan, you had to have thought they would retaliate. So I think they're going to owe a little bit more explanation soon, because people are really going to feel it. The Chinese know how to put the screws on like no one else. So, you know, the Boeing thing is obviously an intentional hit. They'll do a lot more. They'll stop showing U.S. movies in China. They'll do all that kind of stuff, and in the hope that U.S. industries start going after the White House. So I think we'll see what happens, but they're going to need to respond to this sooner rather than later because these are some big CEOs that are going to have a problem.
Dan, what do you make of the critique of David Sanger that they seem to be making it up as they go along with China?
I agree. I actually think they switched to China very fast to kind of try to override the announcement that they were doing the 90-day pause. I mean, it's like if you're going to kind of go a little bit to defense, jump in on offense on the other side, because they're always projecting strength and toughness. Look, there's also stories not only about Boeing, but there are several other companies. And I've always thought this, Axios wrote this morning, Trump hates the headlines about exemptions that he gave and then kind of didn't give and then supposedly is giving, but taking away in 2 months to Apple and others. The problem is it's real lives of real people. Like we can all laugh about the iPhone or video games, but whether it's selling airplanes to Chinese or Caterpillar, backhoes in China. Like the reality is our companies do a lot of business outside of our borders. We are 4% of the world's population. And so I go back to whether it's China or everything else, I don't really think they have a plan for long-term trench warfare against either the rest of the world or China. They want people to fold quickly. And when they don't, it's a problem. And now they're looking for all these, exemptions. Are we going to subsidize the farmers again for $30 billion?
Yes.
What? Yeah.
Yes,
well,
we
then,
are.
Well,
Yes,
then
we
what
are.
about every other industry that's going to start taking it on the chin?
They don't grow our food.
Okay, so you're going to tell the steel workers in Pennsylvania,
No,
tough
we
guys.
we might give them some money too.
Okay, so now let's keep going. What about the folks in North Carolina?
No,
Textile work.
no money for them.
Great.
Just
There's a Senate
just
race down there. Tom Tillis will be very happy to. I mean, this is the problem. They're making it up as they go. And you can't buy everybody off.
the criticism from the establishment, and I put David Sanger in that list, wonderful man, but member of the
chairman of
establishment.
it.
Yeah. It continues to be critical, not just of the China focus, but of the damage that they believe the tariffs are doing. Rich Larry has an op-ed piece today saying the American economy was the envy of the world. Why is the president ruining it? Phil Gramm has an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal today. These voices remain very loud in the establishment, quietly whispered in Congress amongst Republicans, shouted from the rooftops from Wall Street and lots of CEOs. Here is, in an interview with Bloomberg, the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, trying to explain to the establishment why they need to cool down and calm their jets. 105, please.
In your old world, you would be that person with your ear. In your old world, you would be that person with your ear against the door trying to understand what policymakers were doing so then you could predict where financial markets would go. In this moment where we hear from top executives constantly, today it was the Goldman Sachs CEO, last week it was Jamie Dimon, and this uncertainty, especially around tariff policy, what advice would you be giving to your old self?
To look at the whole policy because, again, not you, but others in the media can pick one factor. So right now it's tariff, but we have you mentioned we have tax coming up. We have deregulation. So it's a the leg stool, and I would try to think about what's happening. The tariff sequencing was always going to be first. The tax bill's going very well, and I think I've been pleasantly surprised at how quickly that's moving along. And then deregulation from our area on the financial side and in the rest of the economy, that takes a little longer, but that will start kicking in September, October, in the fall, and those are going to be very powerful.
Bilateral deals first with UK and some Asian countries. Do you think that his elevation now and his speaking out in the way we saw in that clip is enough to calm the horses to get them through the next few weeks till they can start announcing some bilateral deals, or it's still a crisis?
I think the point that he's making there, which is something that Kevin Hassett is echoing as well, is that there's this holistic approach, right? Hey, you guys, the tariffs might, theoretically raise you $1, but the taxes will cut you $1. The deregulation will save you another $1. Net, you'll be better off. So they're trying to make it look at the whole environment in which you're going to be doing business. I think if there was certainty, I mean, Dan talks about that all the time. The problem is for a lot of these guys, they're like, I'm not sure I can bank on that. And I think that's the problem for a lot of these folks is that you're telling them that there's short-term pain and you should bank on a potentially uncertain future. And that's where I think there's a bigger problem is that everything that he's saying, I think will probably happen. But if you're a business leader that has to plan for the next quarter, how much is certain? And I think that's the bigger problem that they face is that there's not this. They're always searching for certainty to plan, investment, etc. and I'm not sure that they're getting that.
Dan, where do you put Scott Bessent in the pantheon of Treasury secretaries whose job includes trying to reassure markets?
I actually think he's pretty good. I mean, I don't disagree with his message. There are some good things likely about to happen between, let's say, Memorial Day and 4th of July. It is likely they will pass some version of tax cuts and deregulation in energy, financial services, some other things that should provide a juice to the economy. It's real. It's just a question of, do they get these deals, these bilateral deals with the bigger countries? I think if you get them with very small countries trying to roll up to the top, it's better than nothing, but I don't think it'll move the needle. And then to Sean's point, the macro trade environment is material to a lot of these companies, and they will not want to do mergers, acquisitions, or large capital expenditures when there is so much uncertainty. They're unlikely.
By the way, just to be clear, and I think I've mentioned this before, but like a full-on FTA, a free trade agreement, a bilateral FTA, yes, that takes years. Doing what they're talking about now, this is where I see media reports about how this is going to take forever. That's just simply not true. Dealing with a harmonized tariff schedule from another country is a very different beast than negotiating an entire FTA. So there is a...
Well, but you anticipate these deals will deal with non-tariff barriers or not?
Oh, I think to some degree they have to, but again, a country can decide fairly easily. They're not, most of these countries, in fact, I haven't heard a single one so far. When you're dealing with an FTA, it's both ways, right? You do this, I'll do this. I disagree that how this. I haven't seen a single instance of pushback saying, fine, if we take down our non-tariff barrier on your pork coming into our country, we want greater access in the following 5 ways. I haven't seen a single instance of this. So it's not, you can deal with both in a very simple way. I literally had this conversation with Netanyahu last Monday, and I said, what are you going to do? He goes, we're just going to get rid of them, full stop. And I said, that's it. He goes, no, we're getting rid of them. I go, what about the non-tariff barriers? We'll get rid of them. They gave us a list. We'll get rid of them.
But doesn't that require a lot of due diligence to be confident?
I was just going to say, it depends what.
Well, no. So yes, right? Because again, half of the time you look at what South Korea said when we negotiated the FTA with them about autos, and they can put a lot on paper, and then you go to implement it, and suddenly there's no U.S. cars because they hold everyone up at customs for 3 months or whatever. And I think so. But from a due diligence standpoint, you can say, great, we are going to take the tariff, the barriers down, or we're going to take the retaliatory tariffs down, and we will then use the next 90 days to verify that everything is in this agreement, but as a gesture of goodwill. But that could easily be done.
Sorry.
Well, no, go ahead, Dan.
I just think it is so much more complicated than that, even on a bilateral trade deal, because in a lot of instances, it's not king to king. They've got to get their own parliaments, their own congresses to approve this. They have their own domestic constituencies. The idea that let's say the UK is going to pull down all of their tariffs and non-tariff barriers, and that's the end of the discussion. What are they getting? What are we going to do for? I mean, it's so much.
They get it. They already got it.
Yeah. All right. I want to talk about one macroeconomic thing, and then move on to a new topic. Animal spirits and this notion of layoffs, right? We saw a few announcements of layoffs in the early days of the new tariff policy. I've not noticed any big announcements soon. Why do companies announce layoffs? Sometimes they do it to please shareholders. Sometimes they do it because they actually think the economy's not going to warrant keeping the payroll the way it is. Do either of you anticipate more announcements of major layoffs in the coming weeks, or has that somehow been tamped down by whatever dynamics?
I think it's largely been tamped down. I mean, look, it's a big deal to go through layoffs because if things turn around quickly, then you got to try to rehire people, and that's a problem. I think the bigger issue is not necessarily the tariffs per se. It is if you start seeing more and more data about consumers slowing down spending, corporate profits so far are holding steady, although people are warning about the quarter ahead. But I think layoffs are like the last resort. So I don't think that anything will happen by now. I do think if we're still talking about this in July, I'd be nervous about summer and fall.
I think there's a bit different. I haven't seen, in fact, if you look at the jobs report, right, 288,000 jobs last month, and we were expecting 140. The number of jobs is actually going up, which is interesting. I have actually been surprised living in where I do in Virginia, but I haven't seen more like Booz Allen Hamilton big announcements.
Yeah.
Right? It's just, maybe it's happening. I can't say I'm wired to that, but when I was when I was on active duty, we had, I don't know, a large contingent of booze contractors and khaki contractors. And so I haven't seen that. And those would have been, I assume, the first to go to announce something. Surprised not to see them. But, look, to Scott Besant's point, we had a great job report. Inflation report came out, looks really good. So, this is where they're actually getting the benefit of some pretty good economic policy announcements. And as I've said before, it's not just the numbers. I mean, you go to the grocery store, I continue, as I drive around. I was up yesterday in Rhode Island. Gas was $2.93. As I pulled into to get my rental car gassed up. I don't think people are seeing it affecting their lives the way that they did under Biden.
All right. The case of Kilmore Abrego Garcia, I see three big areas of uncertainty. First of all, I still don't really know the facts about his status and his record and the case against it. I wish someone would do a definitive explanation of it because I still don't understand it. Second, we don't know what the courts are going to decide. Again, there's a hearing in Ford today. And third is how the administration is going to react if they do face a more explicit order, which I believe must be coming, because I can't believe the Supreme Court isn't going to be firmer when they get it back in their hands. Here is Bill Hemmer of Fox News with Stephen Miller talking about the case. This is 108, please.
The Supreme Court said that is the most the government can be expected to do. So we won the case handily. The misreporting on this has been atrocious.
Okay,
Secondly,
I appreciate
he was
the
not, no, Bill, it's important. He was not mistakenly sent to El Salvador.
Okay, so do you still
He's
believe
an illegal alien from El Salvador. Hold on, this is important. In 2019, he was ordered deported. He has a final removal order from the United States. These are things that no one disputes. Where is he from? El Salvador. Where is he a resident and citizen of? El Salvador. Is he here illegally? Yes. Does he have a deportation order? Yes. A DOJ lawyer who has since been relieved of duty, a saboteur, a Democrat, put into a filing incorrectly that this was a mistaken removal. It was not. This was the right person sent to the right place. Now, some have said, well, but he had a thing called a withholding order. So a withholding order means you've been ordered deported, but an immigration judge is saying you cannot go back to a particular country. Here's the thing. If you are a member of a foreign terrorist organization, you cannot have a withholding order. Since he's in MS-13, there is no withholding order. Furthermore, the gang that he is accused of being persecuted by doesn't exist anymore in El Salvador. The 18th Street gang is gone. So you have an illegal alien from El Salvador. Bill, where are we supposed to send the illegal alien from El Salvador?
You haven't even
to what
allowed me
country?
to ask you a question. Are you convinced he is still a member of MS-13? That was your original charge.
Yes. But here's the thing, Bill. Yes, but here, not only am I convinced of it, not only is El Salvador convinced of it, Bill, he's an illegal alien from El Salvador with the deportation order. So his only options in life, Bill, his only options in life are to be deported to El Salvador or to be deported to some other country. That's it. He has a deportation order. So, Bill, you tell me, what country should we deport him to? Tell me, please.
Sean, what do you think of that?
So going back to your original point, I've heard, I will say this, just on the facts alone, there's no question he was in the country illegally. We do know that. We do know his country of origin is El Salvador. We do know he had a deportation order. Those are all, to your point, those are, I'm with you, Mark. I will just say it is like amazing how it's taken this long to cut through some of this to sort of go, okay, what is the ground truth? And those to me, those are the facts, right? And so they have, I will give them credit. Yesterday, this little construct that they've set up, right? So they send the guy back to his country of origin, and then the court says you must facilitate. That's the word in the court order, facilitate. And so Pam Bondi says, yeah, if El Salvador wants to send him back, we will give him a plane, but he's not our citizen. We can't go into another country and take him back. So I will say, I give them credit for creating the construct, which is you cannot go into another country and take another country's citizen and yank them. That's right. I think we can, again, that's a fact. Like you can't just go into a country and decide you want someone back. So they have they have created, again, give them a little bit of creativity credit here, scenario where They sent the guy back to his country of origin because there was a court order that said he could, was to be deported. And then the judge says, well, you got to facilitate him to come back for a hearing. And they said, great, we'll give him a plane if the country of origin, El Salvador, will send him back. And then the president of El Salvador says, why I can't send a citizen of my country back to you. So, I will say you got to give them a little bit of credit. I mean, for all the talk about did they think this through on the tariffs, they definitely thought it through on this one.
Dan.
Well, they thought something through at the last second. I think it's a bad look. I think this whole thing, look, where there is a will, there is a way. I've never heard the Trump administration say, oh, kind of woe is us. We don't have any control. Like that. And Sean, I hear you. But look, the Supreme Court doesn't rule 9-0 on very many things. And
but they used the language very clearly. They didn't.
I mean, this sounds Clintonian here. Like look.
Let's see what happens when
but Dan, let's look. We said yesterday when we were talking about some others. I mean, we're a political show, so let's talk about the political view of this. Sure, I think if President Trump wanted to, he could have sat next to the president yesterday and said, "Do me a favor. I'd like to bring this guy back and have a hearing or something. Can you do that?" And I'm sure that the president of El Salvador would have said, "You're sure, Mr. President." Do you want to be on the political side of bringing back a guy like that who was illegally in the country, had a deportation order, and is an MS-13 member back to this country?
Well, we don't know the MS-13 member.
We do
know that he was, but we do know, again, let's get back to the 100% facts. We do know he was in the country illegally. We do know he had an order of deportation.
We do, but we know that applies to many people who some Americans would find sympathetic. I'm just talking about the raw politics.
Yeah, Sean,
I get it. I also find it sympathetic when you go down my road and you're going 32 and a 25 and get a ticket, but it's the law. And we are a nation of law. So follow the law and you won't have to.
Well, then you got to deport 12 million. Then you got to deport 12 million people, including people who are cleaning your house and picking your lettuce.
Sean, I think the challenge for the Trump administration, for the politics of this, on many of these immigration issues, I have said, to your point, they're 80-20, and I would not defend some of this. On this one, the Trump administration is beginning to look chaotic and a little out of control and sloppy. It's happening on DOGE. You're seeing it in polls. You're seeing it on the tariffs. I actually, look, if I were the Trump administration, bring them back. First off, it's not a Democratic rogue lawyer who accidentally put a word in to stick it to the, Pam Biondi. At least I have not seen anything that's legitimately says that. Then bring them back, do the formal stuff and send them out. And I think then the American people would say, to your point, we're a rule of law nation. They followed it and we support getting rid of criminals. Yeah. Instead, you're digging in. This is like signal. You're just digging in and just saying, we didn't do anything wrong. We didn't do anything wrong. The base loves it, but I think moderates, the people who decide elections, cringe.
All right, a few more topics, and we want to get your questions and comments.
Can I just make a quick counter to that, Dan?
Of course.
Here's what I would worry about. I think in some ways you play that game, but you roll the dice when you do that. You bring them back, and you've seen some of these district courts, Rhode Island and Oregon, rule, and so you go, gosh, if we want to do this to make a show of it, then great. We'll bring the guy back and we'll deport it. And then some district judge rules that technically under their whatever, and you go through the whole legal process. And I'm being serious in this. Yep. In the process of that man does something bad. Do you want to be the guy that did that? Because I don't.
Be the greatest gift to your party.
I
would never want to put another American through that just to prove a political point.
I'm violating my rule to never predict judges, justices, or juries. I think the Supreme Court's going to order the White House to bring him back, and then it's going to be very interesting. All right, quickly on the last few topics. Joe Biden's giving the speech this afternoon, full coverage on two-way tonight. Dan, what's the best and worst case of what Biden can do with this speech for the party?
I think the best case is he gets through it and doesn't have any kind of senior moments or look or sound old. I can't believe he's going to deliver kind of memorable lines that the party's going to rally around and want him out more. I think the worst case is people say, oh my God, this guy, the other party pushed him to be in office for 4 more years, and he doesn't look like he could be doing the job today.
Sean?
The best case scenario is that every network in America takes this live.
All right. Do you think predict now? Do you think MSNBC and CNN will take it?
I think MSNBC takes it, CNN dips in. I wouldn't be surprised, by the way, if Fox does and not maybe take it, but because to Dan's point, I'm telling you, can I just, one other thing real quick. Who is the genius that scheduled this thing? What is it, 5:30 they're doing this?
Yeah, it's either 5 or 6 Eastern.
You
Not
think
sure
that
which.
guy, that's bedtime for Joe. I mean,
Yeah,
honest to God.
I was surprised.
Who was the genius that
All right,
thought that was a
let's
good idea?
quickly a topic we've talked about before. We've got Biden talking about Social Security. We've got Hakeem Jeffries. We know the Democrats want to make this central to the midterms, and I continue to not truly understand what the Republicans are doing about it. Sean, where are we in terms of Social Security being a dominant issue for the midterms?
Honestly, I worry about that's I think a natural worry for most Republicans. I'm somewhat shocked at how little Democrats have put behind this. I've not AOC and Bernie haven't broken through. I don't see a coordinated effort on this. Dan, I mean, I'd be surprised. Do you disagree with that?
No, I think it will not be the issue. It will be part of the issue bucket that, depending on what happens here, they're going to try to talk about chaos. They're just going to say that he needs a check.
All right. Harvard is now the darling of the resistance because they're the first organization, with the exception of a few law firms, to fight back. They're being cheered on 103 by no less than another former Democratic president, Barack Obama, who went on Twitter. Harvard has set an example for other high ed institutions, rejecting an unlawful and ham-handed attempt to stifle academic freedom while taking concrete steps to make sure all students at Harvard can benefit from an environment of intellectual inquiry, rigorous debate, and mutual respect. Let's hope other institutions follow suit. Dan, who are you betting on, Harvard v. Trump?
Well, as a boy from New Haven, I don't often root for Harvard. But in this instance, I actually think Harvard has a chance for two reasons. One, they have the money. They could put hundreds of millions of dollars behind this to go up against the federal government. And two, they have the brain power. You know, it's not, they're not just going to get anybody off the street. So I think it's great. I think the institutions should stand up. I think it's shameful what is happening here. And I wish Harvard the best.
Sean, who do you bet on, Harvard or Trump?
So I guess the question is, what's the bet? Because Harvard gets $9 billion from the federal government right now, and they are asking for a rescission of what, 2.4, 2.5?
Right.
So for starters.
Right. First of all, take the full $9 billion. I don't think I'm glad.
But do you think this ends up in the courts?
What's the court? The government has a right to decide where it sends grants to. Take it away.
But this isn't a grant.
The Supreme Court may say they're punishing Harvard for their internal policies,
anti-Semitism policies, and I think they have a right to do it. If the Biden administration could punish right-leaning institutions for not complying with DEI, then you can certainly go the other way.
So you think there are 5 or more Supreme Court justice votes for what the Trump administration is doing?
I do. And I also, because I think to say, look, again, remember, they were being, other groups were being punished for not implementing diversity initiatives. So if it can go one way, it can swing the other. I don't think that, and I just don't think there's an entitlement factor. This is a fight that everyone on the right is willing to have. And I know the rescission package, which, isn't gotten the attention it has yet, but OMB sent this rescission package up to the Hill, or is about to, that includes NPR, PBS. God bless them. Fight it out. I cannot tell you how excited I am about this, but I don't think it should be 2. I think they should take the whole 9. The idea that people, average, everyday working people, are going to side with Harvard over getting billions of dollars of tax money, no way.
You know what, Sean? The base will love this. But I come back to this. The middle of the electorate did not vote for civil war against universities and everyone.
Civil war. You think you think that the farmer in Iowa cares how many billions Harvard's getting?
He doesn't like the government sticking their nose in all of this stuff. They never have.
Harvard
will.
Harvard will lose in the court of public opinion, but they'll win in the Supreme Court. That's my prediction.
All right.
Two more things.
Lose.
Two more things. I continue to be fascinated by the way Donald Trump's annual physical was covered. Last night on Two Way Tonight, Dr. Ray Scalder, who treated Nixon, one of the leading experts on presidential medical records, gave the clean bill of health a clean bill of health. 107, please.
Well, I've read the report that Captain Barbara Bella has submitted, and it's an excellent report. It's very detailed. We never had anything like this before. It's very specific. He's got excellent numbers as far as his physical examination And the findings in his laboratory tests are excellent. I think he's, from the standpoint of what is reported, and I have no reason to doubt it's complete and honest, and the integrity of a captain of the United States Navy, I think it's an excellent report. And he appears to be in excellent physical and mental health.
So, Sean, here's a softball for you. Shouldn't the press, in trying to play down its Trump derangement syndrome, shouldn't the coverage have reflected Dr. Schouder's point of view that this was an extraordinarily forthcoming report, rather than just, reporting what was in the report with no commentary?
Yeah, I mean, I saw Dr. Hayworth there too. I didn't know what Nan said, but
she said the same thing, but she's a Republican, so
I know.
Let's.
But see, the thing that's interesting is that, like, it's one thing to pontificate at the end of a report, which we talked about a little yesterday, but numbers are numbers, right? And you can't fudge those. I mean, so if somebody's cholesterol is, whatever, I mean, or heart or resting heart rate is, so it is what it is. As far as the coverage goes, I mean, maybe I'm just numb to this, but I wasn't shocked. I
wasn't shocked. I'm just saying I would like, for those watching who work for the Washington Post and the New York Times, your story should have said this, by the standards of recent president, they should have said that.
But they also should have said, and I think the point he made, I made this yesterday without the medical prowess that your guest did, but the idea that I have never in my time ever seen anything so publicly detailed, that was put out. And I said that without any context. I mean, just in terms of a political observer, that doctor obviously had much more context than I do.
But what I'm saying is, if the AP doesn't want to be kicked out of the pool, and if Caitlin Collins doesn't want to be ragged on by the president, and if
which, by the way, was an excellent rag.
If these folks want to have the confidence of the public that they're covering every president fairly, this was an opportunity to be fair to Donald Trump, and they didn't take it.
I think this is the point that you're getting at. I hope, anyway. I don't think they care anymore. I mean, when I talk, they don't.
I'm urging them to care. I'm urging them to cover him toughly when he does stuff, as Bill Hemmer covered Stephen toughly there. They should cover him toughly. But when something happens like this, it's news, and it's important for people to know that a guy who in the past has not been forthcoming, he wasn't forthcoming during COVID, wasn't forthcoming when he was a candidate for president the first time, and had that doctor with the hair put out the thing. This was a seemingly very forthcoming statement. They should report it and get on the right side of history.
The other thing that I have found fascinating, and this goes back to oh my gosh, what was Terry Schiavo? You remember the case, and people were diagnosing Terry Schiavo from afar. And we talked about it way back then, when it was like, it was irresponsible for people to try to make medical diagnoses without anything. And yesterday, was it Saturday? What's her name? Abby Phillip from CNN is talking about President Trump clearly has mental issues that are obvious to anybody. And I'm like, here you actually have data from a doctor, from a hospital, and yet you chose not to cover it. And yet the speculative nature of what you do cover, and you covered up for Biden, and then you speculate on Trump. And when you do get a chance to actually look at real data from a real doctor, from a real hospital, you say nothing.
That's my point, Dan.
Yeah, look, I agree with you, Mark, that they should have said it. He did put a lot out there. And even though I, said yesterday and still believe that the weight may not necessarily be accurate, I will say his stamina is remarkable. I mean, there was a thing over there yesterday about he watching C-SPAN at 2:00 in the morning, and yet he's still up at 6 and 7 and goes on and on. I think, and I'm guessing that one reason they may not is in Trump's history as a public figure, he has put stuff out about his kind of mental capabilities and his physical fitness that are just a farce.
And that can go in, and that should go in the story too.
And so I think then, to Sean's point, that is why the media kind of moves on and didn't give it. But Mark, you make a very good point. They did put it out for a guy who's often accused of hiding the ball. They put it out, and people should have said that, particularly after Biden.
And particularly after Biden, to set an example, to say we can't have presidents of whatever age hiding the facts of their mental and physical health.
I agree.
By the way, I do, Dan. I think we didn't mention this yesterday, but on Saturday night, flying back from the USC, he did a press conference in the back of Air Force One with his granddaughter Kai at 2:17 a.m. And I got a kick when I'm reading the pool report that it says they called a lid at 2:47 a.m. Sunday morning, and then the guy gets up and golfs it. I was like, dude, I was in bed at 9:47 Saturday night, and I was up at like 7:45.
It's remarkable.
I mean,
and she looked a little tired during
I know, but
during
as a guy who worked
interaction.
for him 8 years ago, it is not hyperbole. You cannot keep up with this man.
Yeah. Andrew, welcome in. Thank you for joining. Tell folks who don't know where you are and what's on your mind.
Good morning, everybody. Love the show. I'm in north of Baltimore, so in a little town north of Baltimore.
Dundalk.
No, not quite Dundalk. I do. I'm a pharmacist, so I do float down to Dundalk sometimes. But no, I'm glad you know about Dundalk. You're familiar with the smell of Dundalk.
Well, I'll just leave it at that. I'm aware.
Yeah. Welcome in, Andrew. Thanks for joining.
First thing is, I love your guys' commentary about 2028 prognostication. And being from Maryland, I know I've seen Wes Moore's name floated a bit. This one's for Dan. What do you guys think about his future? I know what I think about his future, and I think it doesn't look great from how it looks here in the state of Maryland. But Dan, what do you think about him in terms of 2028 prospects? And does he have a future as a presidential or a vice presidential candidate?
Yeah, yes, he does. And I heard from so many people Friday after our show within the party, advocating for certain people and against things that I said. He does. He's young. He is a person of color. He is charismatic. I think he's got some issues in his biography that kind of came up a little bit that he's going to have to address probably more. And I think, too, Maryland's a very progressive state. And so the theory of the case that he'll put forward, I'll be curious about. But I absolutely think he will be a candidate that will be talked about. He may run. Certainly, if he doesn't, he will be a vice presidential candidate that people will definitely talk about. But I think Wes Moore is a serious person.
Andrew, what I'll say that's interesting is sometimes people who aren't from the state that you're from, who, you know them the best, have an impression of somebody else because they only see them on TV or whatever. And I know that's been the case sometimes with one of the former governors from my state of my youth, who had not realized the damage that she had done as governor to the state and found her attractive on the national stage. I think Wes Moore, I clearly don't have a full, as far I can see Maryland from my backyard. But I don't follow Wes Moore. I will say on the national stage, he seems impressive. The way he handled the bridge collapse when he got that attention was very, very well. He did it very well. He had command of the issue. He handled the crisis very well. His military background. He's got a great big picture bio. And to Dan's point, in a primary going in the Dem, he can lean into the progressive nature of Maryland and some of the things that he's championed there. So I do find him without, he's early in the gate, but I think he has a very impressive appeal to him.
Yeah, I just think.
Go ahead.
No, I just think that he's actually, if you're as someone from Maryland, he's only got a 52% approval rating in the state of Maryland, and that's pretty low for a Democrat. Governor Hogan sat with 60s and 70s percentile approval ratings. He's really bungled this budget issue here in Maryland, and I think once people put more of a spotlight on him, I think he's really going to struggle. I watched a clip where he was during the budget thing where he was asked he was claiming they found all these savings. And he stood there dumbfounded. He comes off as an empty suit whenever he's put on the spot. He's a big talker. I think he's an empty suit. I think he's an empty suit.
Yeah. So Andrew, I met Wes Moore with some regularity on the set of Morning Joe. So I have to discount my interactions with him there, since no one on the set of Morning Joe necessarily should be considered to be a president. Not necessarily. I think he's an impressive guy. He's got. If you were making,
he's a great talker for sure.
If you were making a Frankenstein candidate of things you want a presidential candidate: bio, ability to give a speech, understanding of the mechanics of politics. He's great. My two big doubts about him now, which he can grow into, one is mastering governing, right? And
yeah.
as you pointed out, he's not mastered governing Maryland. Let's see what his record is over time, and whether he demonstrates the ability to use the levers of government to make the real lives of rural people better. And then second is he's a younger guy. He's young looking. I think he needs to demonstrate to people that he's absolutely commanding and that he could sit in a chair and do the job with absolute command. military background helps there, but I don't think he's demonstrated that to a wide group yet. And I think he needs to if he wants to run and win. Andrew, thank you for coming on. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Love the show.
Maryland, my Maryland. That's where I was born. All right, Daria, welcome in. Thanks for joining. Tell folks who don't know where you are, what's on your mind as you come on camera a little bit here. Maybe we've just had there you go. You tilt down a little bit so we can see you.
Or not, depending on how you want to do it.
Or not. But you definitely need to unmute. Let's see. We got some audio and video issues there. I'll give you 4 seconds to fix it. Otherwise, we're moving on. All right.
I'm mute. How's that?
There you go.
There you go. All right. There you go.
Look up. Right. There you go.
All right. There you go. Welcome in, sir.
My question is actually about Social Security and the saying not to tax Social Security benefits is in the tax passage. So my question to Dan is, how are Democrats going to play that? And my question to Sean, won't that fact that it's in the tax package help mute any criticism on Social Security from the Democrats?
It's a great point. I think the party will be hard pressed to oppose taxes on Social Security, taxes on tips, taxes on overtime. Trump is smart. They've got a lot of popularity. I think there's a difference between tax cuts and how well you can run a program. And the question is, if you cut services and people get frustrated and feel like that they're not receiving it, that's when you get people angry and say it's time for a change.
Dario, like anything else that happens in Washington, whether it's a bridge program or a tax cut, if you don't sell it, then it's almost like, that old saying that if a tree falls in a forest and no one sees it. And I think that the big question is going to be, does the Trump team get behind some of these things in the tax bill to go out there and sell them? And that goes, and frankly, I think just because you do one doesn't mean you can't get attacked on the other. So, to Dan's point, I think you could pass a no tax on Social Security, and then the Democrats could still say that you're dismantling the program. That being said, I think that Trump has been very clear that he does not want to touch any of the entitlement programs, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. So he has been very clear on that since he first ran. And I think with the exception of waste, fraud, and abuse and some efficiencies, he's just not going to let that happen.
Mario, thank you for coming in. Grateful to you. Appreciate it. All right. Hit the wrong button. Sometimes happens. Hit the wrong button again. Kenneth, welcome in. Tell us everybody on camera and what's on your mind.
Got to hit the mute button there. Oh, and he's got a child.
I say we need to know full accounting. Kenneth, who do you got there with you?
This is big guy, Caden.
Caden, welcome, Caden.
He was born 10 pounds 7 ounces, so big guy is his nickname.
Wow.
No,
with great pajamas.
Always. I wanted to talk about Iran. It seems to be not talked about as much as I feel like it should.
Yeah.
I get the impression that the administration is headed towards a JCPOA style agreement. I feel like Trump's propensity or desire to not have a conflict in the Middle East is going to supersede his willingness, or is going to facilitate his willingness to get back into what the Israelis deemed as a bad agreement. And so,
Kenneth, go ahead. Yeah, look, it's going to end with an agreement, right? We're not going to go in there and disarm them. They're not going to unilaterally disarm. There's going to be an agreement. So you can say it's the same as a John Kerry agreement, or you can wait and look to see what are the terms. The goal is to bring them into the community of nations, and primarily to not allow them to obtain a nuclear weapon. And so, unless you think espionage and sanctions can stop them, which hasn't worked, I think you have to be for an agreement. You just have to be for an agreement that's enforceable and effective, right?
Well, I think military action could stop them, but my thought is that, obviously that can escalate in a big way. And I don't think that Iran, I feel like the dynamic is such that Iran
every Pentagon and every Israeli military has presented the last 10 leaders or so with options for trying to take out their nuclear program through military strike. And they've all rejected the options, even though Iran has moved inexorably towards the capacity to have a nuclear weapon. So it's great to not take it off the table, and it's great to ask the defense planners to continue to present options, but no one's come up with an option that anybody thinks is worth executing, which is why this president, who wants peace and doesn't want Iran to have nuclear weapons and would like to bring Iran into the community of nations, the same goals of every previous president who's dealt with this since the 80s, is trying to see if Witkoff can do a deal. Sean.
There is a fundamental problem in the equation here. Iran chants death to America. And if you think that you can trust them for any deal, and I'm not you, Kenneth, but anyone, you're nuts. These people hate us. They want to destroy us. They want to kill us. And they gladly took the money that Barack Obama and Joe Biden sent over there and then continue to enrich uranium in advance of a nuclear weapon. They can't be trusted. And I think the president was right to get out of the agreement from the first place. They won't agree to certain oversight and sanctions. I think we should always be pursuing this, but any belief that these guys are going to adhere to inspections or not continue to pursue a nuclear weapon is nuts. So I think that the more we scare them to believing that there's a military option, that might be the only thing to pursue. I don't believe them. I think that they are evil. I think that we need to not kid ourselves what their ultimate goal is and approach everything from that standpoint.
I'm glad you mentioned that, and I think that I hope that the administration could float the idea that any agreement with the United States, and I tweeted this at you and tagged you in it, is predicated on a understanding that Iran cannot, in a official government capacity, chant death to America. Because I don't think you can do business with a regime that does that.
Right? I mean, I don't know. How do you sit at the table and say, hey, can you guys just stop saying kill us while we talk for a moment?
It's happening now. Witkoff's dealing with them.
I know that. And I'm just saying, I think this is a fool's errand to some extent.
I mean, this is why Democrats rip their hair out, because you're right. I mean, I think the Israelis want to deal with it a little more directly, but I've said this going back to when this issue came up. I don't think Trump wants to go to war with Iran in the Middle East and risk things spiraling out of control. So to Mark's point, what you're probably going to get is a deal. Can you trust the Iranians? No, which is why Israel doesn't want it to happen and work so forcefully against the Obama agreement. And I think Trump didn't do anything in his first term on this, and I don't think he's going to really do anything in his second term on this. He'll try to get a deal, but none of us on here would ever trust Iran to actually dismantle their nuclear program, ever.
But at least get a condition that they stop chanting death to America.
I mean, you can't stop the mullahs on the street.
Sticks and stones, Kenneth. I don't care.
And to be honest with you, I'm less concerned about what they chant and what they think. Yeah. It's almost like people taking pronouns out of their bio. I'd rather have them in there to know exactly what their real goal is.
Kenneth, thank you. Great question. Great pajamas. Grateful to you. Markets are all up currently. If they stay up in positive territory, it'd be the third day in a row of positive development there at a time when the establishment says Trump's ruined the economy. Somehow people are finding good buys on Wall Street currently. All right, let's get David in. David, welcome in. Thanks for joining. Tell folks what's
Wickham is making a strong case, by the way, Mark.
All right.
Ooh, Wickham, the 2000s masters.
We'll bring Wickham in as well.
Hey.
David first, then Wickham. Go ahead, guys, back to back.
Hey, how you doing? I was just about this guy from El Salvador. You had a deportation order in 2019. So he's been illegal, if my math is right, for 6 years. This country is just completely screwed up. If a guy that does not belong here has a 9-0 Supreme Court decision in his favor, I don't get it. I really don't.
Yeah, that's a fair position. I'd say you speak for tens of millions.
At least probably Stephen Miller.
Yeah. I think Wickham wants to talk about immigration too. So Wickham, floor is yours, and then Dan and Sean will respond.
Well, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. I have two questions about deportations. The first is I'm looking at all of the pushback for me, it started with a David French op-ed in the New York Times a week ago Sunday for due process and handling of cases. And I have a completely unscientific estimate that we're looking at maybe 5% of the immigrants who have come being deported. And if that's 20 million, that would be 1 million deportations, which of course you could brag about. And if it's 10 million, it's to be 500,000. You could brag about that too, but it would still leave somewhere between 10 and 20 million immigrants here. And I want to know what you think about the over under on that. And then I have a second question.
Well, ask your second question. We're all going to take the over, but ask your second question.
Overall, you're going to take how much? Well, okay. The second question is this. If that's right, if we still have 10 to 20 million immigrants in the country, they're neither fish nor fowl. They're persons in the meaning of the Constitution, so they have constitutional rights. They're not citizens, so they can't vote. And I'm seeing some commenters, syndicated commenters, talking about, well, maybe they shouldn't be participating in this or that program, and we do that with the H-2B visas anyway. So I'm wondering if you think we could ever get to the point that we start to codify what non-citizens' rights are in this country, in the same sense that I think the Europeans, and I haven't researched this very much, but in the same sense that the Europeans had these guest worker programs. Could you ever imagine us trying to codify the status of these non-citizens?
Sean and then Dan on everything both gentlemen asked about.
I mean, I firmly believe that the left's goal is to let in as many people as possible in an attempt to create a new batch of citizens. I mean, it's you cannot explain it in any other rational way than allowing people to come in through the southern border, giving them all of the rights, the social security numbers, everything. If your ultimate goal isn't to do that when you do have a legal and lawful process otherwise, it just defies logic that there'd be any other goal than that. So I think left to their own devices, the Democratic Party, if they gained a trifecta of power again, would unequivocally do that. For that reason, Wickham, I am a firm believer that one of the biggest things that we on the right need to do while we hold the White House and both houses of Congress is exactly the opposite of kind of what you're saying, which is make it very clear what the laws are, what we strengthen immigration laws, deportations, judges, codify H-1Bs and other visa restrictions, so that we don't fall into this problem. Because I think that the other side is a strong believer in what they will do. And if we don't create and frankly, what the court pushes back over and over again is, I get it, but the law says, so we need to take advantage of these guaranteed 18 plus months right now and codify a lot of these issues in law.
Well, that sounds exactly like what I was asking.
Yeah.
We do something like that.
But I think the opposite, instead of saying what rights they have, I would say make it clear kind of the opposite.
Okay.
Well, I think this stuff is codified. People just don't like what it says. I disagree with Sean. I don't think the left would turn around and, open the spigot again. It was a complete disaster. We paid a huge price. And I would actually say the majority of the party did not support that. There were just segments of the base that thought that, people should come in and we're a nation of immigrants and they felt bad for these people and on and on and on. But that was a huge mistake. And so I think now the question is what you guys are all saying. Reforms need to be codified. They need to be put through Congress. They need to be put on the books. And I think it's actually an opening for a Democrat to potentially try to do this when they run in the future.
Yeah, like a Sister Soldier moment.
Yeah, but the funny thing is what was it? One of them, Jasmine Crockett, or one of them last week, talking about the fact that people should be able to come into the country as they want. We shouldn't have these restrictions. I mean, I get
Jasmine Crockett does not speak for the whole party.
No, I was actually about to say that. I don't, but I think there's your point, Dan, is that it's a very loud and active aspect of the base that does believe that.
Yeah. Okay. And by the way, they thought it would win them the Latino vote, and that didn't work out very well, did it?
Dave and Wickham, thank you both for joining. Appreciate it. Thank you. All right. I want to talk about some upcoming programming here on Two Way. But first, Sean, tell folks what you have tonight, please.
Tonight, we're doing a section. Talk about immigration. I've got the acting head of the Border Patrol and the deputy border czar from the White House. We're going to go through all of this stuff, this case, what progress we're making, what reforms we should be making on immigration. But so if you thought this conversation was interesting, we're going through it with the acting head of the Border Patrol and the Deputy White House Border Czar.
All right, excellent. Joining us now, Michael Moynihan, our colleague at Two-Way. Michael, good morning.
How's it going, guys?
I matched my pocket square just for you. Good job.
Yeah, I mean, look, when I do the show tonight, I'll not be wearing my MG t-shirt, but that's just a morning thing. Come on.
Yeah. All right. So we've talked a little bit about Ukraine, but it's a huge topic, and Michael has on Moynihan Report today a great booking for a great discussion. Michael, tell folks what you have today.
Yeah, I mean, with the attack on Palm Sunday in Sumy that killed 35, 36 people, I mean, there's a report this morning from Bloomberg that the administration is blocking a statement condemning Russia from the G7 countries. Yeah, and that on top of the fact that in the Bukele presser yesterday, Trump, but this is slightly wrong, by the way. People say that Trump said that Zelensky started the war. He did say that, but about 30 seconds before he said Putin started the war too. So it's kind of an interesting thing. And we're going to talk about that with Tim Mack. Tim is a fantastic journalist, was working for NPR when the war started in Ukraine, went over there to cover it and said, you know what, Substack is the future and I want to stay here and cover it. So he's been there ever since and has an incredible eye in for what's going on there and great connections there. So he's going to give us an update of what's going on the ground in Ukraine at the moment.
All right. So Michael and Tim Mack will be having this conversation like no other today. Special time. If you want to watch it live and participate, be able to ask questions, go to twoway.tv and sign up to be part of the live coverage, 11:30 Eastern time this morning. Okay. So again, special time, 11:30 Eastern AM. So an hour and a half. If you want to watch it live, go to twoway.tv and sign up. If you want to watch the program, it'll be available on YouTube, on the Two-Way YouTube channel, starting at 7 p.m. tonight. So you can watch it live at 11:30, or you can watch the full interview in a non-two-way fashion at 7 p.m. Eastern time. Michael, thanks for joining. Best of luck with the interview. Look forward to it.
Thanks so much.
If you haven't sampled Michael's program yet, please do. Tonight, also 6 o'clock Eastern time, I'll be back with Two-Way tonight. Hopefully the Biden speech will, if not, it'll be over by then. If it's not over, we'll probably take it live. But we'll have full analysis of the Biden speech. The president's got photo ops today, lots moving around on tariffs, on deportations, and China, and who knows what else. A full market update, bloody, yada, yada, yada. See you at 6 o'clock, and we'll be back tomorrow. Gentlemen, here's my question for you, which we didn't get to, which is this. Please put up number 109. Dan got some great kudos yesterday on Two-Way, announced his new partnership with us and being part of the Two-Way family. But 109, somehow in conjunction, you guys, we have this, here we go. Somehow in conjunction with Dan's announcement, someone created this out of AI. So Two-Way, I appreciate the homage. Two-Way should be capitalized, but the A and the Y, please, for copyright purposes. Like the smack, Sean or Dan, can you explain the cat?
I was going to ask the same question. I don't. Yeah. That's troubling. I don't like cats, and I don't like that one. I don't get it. I was going to ask you. You don't own a cat?
I don't own a cat.
You're not a pet person, are you?
I love animals. I'm allergic to cats, so I have no cat. And I don't know what that sweater's about. I get the smack. It's actually, when I was at Bloomberg, they made a bobblehead for me. Didn't look anything close to what I look like. That's not bad.
That's fantastic.
So the likeness is okay. But Dan, can you explain the cat or the sweater?
The sweater, you have worn I'm going to say salmon color sweater.
Yeah, I can get that one
on Two-Way tonight. So
right.
I'll get
that. Does the sweater look to you like it would fit the cat? Seems to me it's cat size.
Yes, it's a little off. I think your suit and tie game is fantastic in this, but I don't know the cat, and whoever made it probably has a little subtle message they could share with us.
All right. I'm hoping someone who's watching has a 3D printer and they can make me the actual set, because I would like that.
That'd be awesome.
All right. We'll get to the bottom of this maybe by 6 o'clock tonight. Thank you all for watching, for being part of Two-Way. Again, I'll be back at 6 o'clock. Michael Moynihan live at 11:30. And then tomorrow morning, the three of us.
Someone's saying Google grumpy cat.
Google
I don't know what that means. Yeah, it keeps coming up. Grumpy cat.
Yeah. All right. We'll get to the bottom of it. Join us at 6. Mystery solved. Thank you for everybody who asked questions. And again, see you at 11:30, 6, 7, and then 9 a.m. Thanks. Have a great day.